I drove to my son Ethan's wedding with my heart bursting with pride. After raising him alone since he was 3, when Sarah passed away this day felt like the culmination of 24 years of sacrifice and love. Despite my simple background as a construction foreman, Ethan had graduated college and found success. Madison, his bride, seemed wonderful, and her parents had welcomed me, though something felt slightly off about their polite smiles. Nothing prepared me for what I discovered at the reception table, my nameplate reading "Low-educated fake dad." Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you ever had to stand up for yourself when no one expected you to. The day I became a single father was never part of my plan. Sarah and I had been high school sweethearts, married young, and had Ethan when we were both 23. We were figuring out life together when a rainy night and a drunk driver changed everything. I was at home with our 3-year-old son when the police knocked on our door. The officers told me Sarah had died instantly, which was supposed to be some kind of comfort. It was not. I worked construction back then, had started right after high school. College was something other people did, people with money or scholarships. When Sarah died, I was just a crew member with a decent paycheck, but nothing fancy. Suddenly, I had to be both mother and father to a little boy who kept asking when mommy was coming home. Those first few years were a blur of grief, exhaustion, and trying to keep it together. I learned to cook something besides burgers. I figured out how to braid hair for Crazy Hair Day. I became an expert at checking homework and attending parent-teacher conferences alone, surrounded by couples who looked at me with that mixture of pity and curiosity. But Ethan and we made it work. By the time he hit high school, I had worked my way up to foreman. The pay was better, but the hours were longer. Still, I never missed his baseball games. When he started talking about college, something no one in my family had ever done, I took on weekend work. We visited campuses together, and when he got that acceptance letter from State University, I think I cried harder than he did. 4 years later, watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown nearly burst my chest with pride. All those nights of macaroni and cheese dinners, all those hand-me-down clothes, all the times I had said no to dating again, because Ethan needed stability. It had all been worth it. My son had broken the cycle. He had a business degree and a job offer at a marketing firm before graduation. That was where he met Madison. The first time he brought her home to my modest 3-bedroom ranch house, I was nervous. She came from money that was obvious from her clothes and the way she spoke. But she was kind to me, complimented my barbecue, and seemed to genuinely love my son. When Ethan looked at her, I recognized that same look I used to give Sarah, and I knew this was serious. Meeting her parents, the Harrisons, was another story. They lived in one of those gated communities with fountains at the entrance. Their house had columns, actual columns. Gerald Harrison was some kind of executive, and Diane was on the board of 3 different charities. They shook my hand with perfect smiles that never quite reached their eyes. Construction, Gerald had said when Ethan proudly told them what I did for a living. How industrious. Throughout dinner, they asked about my education. When I told them I had a high school diploma, there was a moment of uncomfortable silence before Diane changed the subject. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their vacation home in the Hamptons and the Ivy League schools their family typically attended. My dad made sure I got through college, Ethan interjected at one point. Worked overtime for years to make it happen. Gerald had nodded politely, but then turned to ask Madison about some family friend who was a state senator. The dismissal was subtle, but unmistakable. On the drive home, I told Ethan not to worry about it. They will come around, I assured him. They just need to get to know me better. He squeezed my shoulder. They will love you once they see what I see, Dad. Just give it time. As wedding preparations began, I offered what I could financially. It was not much compared to what the Harrisons could provide, but it was important to me to contribute. I suggested a nice venue by the lake, where Sarah and I had gotten married, but Diane had already booked an exclusive vineyard estate that cost more than my yearly salary. When I tried to participate in planning meetings, my suggestions were politely noted and promptly ignored. The Harrisons took over everything from the flowers to the menu. Madison seemed overwhelmed by her mother's intensity. but went along with it all. Ethan was caught in the middle trying to please everyone. "Dad, they are paying for most of it," he explained when I expressed concern. "And Madison has always dreamed of this kind of wedding." I swallowed my pride and reminded myself this was about Ethan's happiness, not mine. I would play nice with the Harrisons for his sake, even when Gerald accidentally left me off the email chain for the rehearsal dinner, or when Diane suggested that perhaps my navy suit was not quite formal enough for the occasion. "Maybe you could rent something more appropriate," she had suggested with a thin smile. I bought a new suit instead. It stretched my credit card to the limit, but I refused to show up to my only son's wedding in something rented. The vineyard estate was even more impressive in person than it had been in the photos. Rolling hills covered in grapevines surrounded a stone manor house that looked like it belonged in a movie. Luxury cars filled the parking area, Mercedes, BMWs, and a couple of vehicles I could not even identify. My 10-year-old Ford pickup truck stood out like a sore thumb. I straightened my new tie and reminded myself that I belonged here just as much as anyone. This was my son's wedding day. I was the father of the groom. The ceremony was beautiful. Ethan looked so handsome in his tuxedo, standing tall and confident as Madison walked down the aisle. When they exchanged vows, I thought about Sarah and wished she could have been there to see our boy become a man. I dabbed at my eyes, unashamed of my tears. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception area, a grand hall with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the vineyards. White-gloved servers carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too artistic to eat. I accepted a glass and made small talk with some of Ethan's college friends, who were friendly enough. As dinner approached, I began looking for my seat. The tables were arranged around a dance floor, each with elaborate floral centerpieces and gold-embossed place cards. I wandered among them, searching for my name. When I finally found my table near the back of the room, despite being father of the groom, I froze. There, in elegant calligraphy, was my place card, "Low-educated fake dad." I blinked, certain I had misread it. But the words remained unchanged. My hands felt suddenly cold, and a knot formed in my stomach. I glanced around, wondering if anyone else had noticed. From across the room, I caught sight of Gerald Harrison, laughing with a group of men in expensive suits. He gestured in my direction and said something I could not hear, but the group's laughter told me everything I needed to know. This was no accident. This was deliberate humiliation. For a moment, I thought about walking out. 24 years of sacrifices flashed through my mind. The night shifts, the missed opportunities, the lonely evenings when Ethan was at college, and I sat alone in our empty house. I had given everything to make sure my son had opportunities I never had. The wedding coordinator noticed me staring at the name card and came over. Her eyes widened in horror. "Oh my goodness," she whispered quickly, snatching it up. "I am so sorry, Mr. Adams. I have no idea how this happened." But I knew. And when Diane Harrison approached with her perfect smile, I knew she did too. "Is there a problem?" she asked, innocently. The coordinator showed her the card, and Diane's hand flew to her pearls in manufactured shock. How dreadful. Just a silly mix-up, I am sure. These things happen when you hire help. She took the card, promised to get a new one, and walked away. But I had seen the slight twitch of satisfaction at the corner of her mouth. I retreated to find the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself. As I passed an alcove near the bar, I overheard Gerald's voice. "Did you see his face? Priceless. The man has no business being part of this family. A construction worker with dirt under his fingernails trying to act like he belongs." Another male voice responded. "Bit harsh, Gerald. The guy raised Madison's husband alone, after all." "Please," Gerald scoffed. "Ethan succeeded despite him, not because of him. The boy had natural talent that got him into college. Now he has a real chance at success with our connections. This wedding is his entry into proper society, not a celebration of some blue-collar sob story." I slipped into the bathroom before I could hear more, locking myself in a stall until I could breathe normally again. Memories washed over me, teaching Ethan to ride a bike in the park, near our apartment, working night shifts, so I could attend his daytime school events, helping him with math homework at our kitchen table with my work-roughened hands, struggling to hold the tiny pencil. I remembered how I had turned down a promotion that would have required travel when Ethan was in middle school. How I had said no to Megan, the kind widow who lived next door and had clearly wanted more than friendship because dating would have taken time away from my son. How I had sat in hospital waiting rooms alone when Ethan broke his arm, had appendicitis, caught pneumonia. Who was Gerald Harrison to say I was not a real father? What did he know about the thousands of peanut butter sandwiches, the hundreds of nightmares soothed, the endless loads of laundry? I splashed water on my face and straightened my tie. For Ethan's sake, I would endure this. I would not cause a scene. This was his wedding day, and nothing would spoil it, not even my wounded pride. When I returned to the reception, dinner was being served. A new place card with my name spelled correctly had been set at my table, but the damage was done. Throughout the meal, I felt eyes on me, heard whispers behind hands. Then came the speeches. As father of the groom, I had prepared a short toast. Nothing fancy, just heartfelt words about how proud I was of my son. But before I could be called up, Gerald took the microphone. His speech was a masterclass in subtle degradation. He praised Ethan's remarkable rise and transformation since meeting Madison. He made jokes about finally civilizing my son, teaching him about wine and proper attire. With each word, he erased my 24 years of parenting, replacing them with his 2 years of acquaintance. When I think about the man Ethan has become, Gerald said, raising his glass, I see the promise of the future. A future brightened by proper guidance and opportunity. The implication was clear. Only now, under the Harrisons' influence, was Ethan truly becoming successful. My years of sacrifice were dismissed as inadequate, perhaps even detrimental. I sat through it all, with a frozen smile dying inside, but determined not to show it. When Gerald finished to applause, the wedding planner approached me. We are running behind schedule, she whispered apologetically. We will need to skip your speech to get to the first dance on time. Another calculated insult. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As the evening wore on, the microaggressions continued. Madison's uncle loudly discussed the importance of breeding and background within earshot. Her cousin asked me if I needed the menu, explained to me. Gerald himself ensured I received the smallest slice of cake, served last, as if I were an afterthought. After the cake cutting, I stepped outside onto the terrace for some air. The night was cool, stars visible above the vineyard rows. I was contemplating making an early exit when Gerald joined me, 2 snifters of brandy in hand. Joseph, he said, offering me one of the glasses. Enjoying the evening, I accepted the drink, but said nothing. Look, Gerald continued, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. I think we should clear the air between us, man to man. I waited, steeling myself. Ethan is a fine young man with potential, real potential, the kind that could be. Limited by certain associations. He swirled his brandy. I understand you did what you could as a single parent, given your limitations. But surely you can see that Madison and our family can offer him advantages you simply cannot. My son does not need advantages, I said quietly. He needs love and support. Gerald laughed, a short, dismissive sound. Love does not pay for vacation homes or club memberships. Love does not open doors in the business world. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and it took everything in me not to shrug it off. I would like to make you an offer, he said. A generous one, $50,000. I stared at him. For what? For reducing your presence in their lives. Nothing dramatic, just fewer holidays, phone calls, visits. Let them establish themselves in our social circle, without complications. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Consider it compensation for your years of service. Now it is time for professionals to take over. The brandy in my hand suddenly felt like it might slip through my numb fingers. This man was trying to buy me out of my own son's life, as if fatherhood were a job I could resign from. Gerald, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You have a beautiful home, an impressive career, and more money than I will ever see. But if you think being a father is something that can be bought or sold, then you are the poorest man at this wedding. His face hardened. I expected this emotional response. Think about it logically. What can you offer Ethan now? Your construction knowledge will not help him climb the corporate ladder. Your social connections are non-existent. Your educational guidance is, well, he gestured at me dismissively. The best gift you can give him is to step back and let him rise unencumbered. The best gift I ever gave him, I replied, was showing him that a man's worth is not measured by his bank account or his diploma, but by his character, by showing up every single day, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. That is what fathers do. Gerald's face flushed with anger. Do not lecture me about fatherhood. I have provided my daughter with every advantage. What have you given Ethan? But mediocrity and limitations. You are not a real father. You are a placeholder, a backstory to overcome. His words hit like physical blows, but before I could respond, another voice cut through the night air. What did you just say to my dad? Ethan stood in the terrace doorway, his face a mixture of shock and fury. Behind him stood Madison, her hand over her mouth. Ethan, Gerald began smoothly. Your father and I were just having a frank discussion about... I heard what you said, Ethan interrupted, moving to stand beside me. Every word. Gerald's expression shifted to one of practiced concern. Son, I was only suggesting that. Do not call me son, Ethan snapped. That title belongs to the man standing next to me. The man who taught me how to shave, how to respect women, how to work hard for what matters. The man who never missed a single baseball game even when he was working 60-hour weeks. A small crowd had gathered at the terrace doors, drawn by the rising voices. Madison moved to Ethan's side, taking his hand. Daddy, how could you? She asked, her voice breaking. After everything I told you about how Joseph raised Ethan, Gerald glanced around, suddenly aware of his audience. Madison, sweetheart, you are misunderstanding. I was offering Joseph compensation for disappearing from my life, Ethan finished. I heard you. And I saw the nameplate too. A murmur went through the gathered guests. Gerald's confident facade began to crack. That was just a joke, he insisted. These millennials are so sensitive, Dad, Ethan said, turning to me. Let us show them what real family means. He placed an arm around my shoulders, and in that moment I felt 24 years of doubt and insecurity fall away. My son knew my worth even if no one else in this fancy venue did. Ethan turned to address the onlookers. My father worked 14-hour days so I could play sports. He learned to cook from library books after my mom died because he wanted me to have balanced meals. When I got into college, he sold his prized fishing boat, the only luxury he ever had to help pay my tuition. He looked directly at Gerald. He may not know which fork to use for the salad, but he taught me integrity. He might not have a college degree, but he has wisdom no university could ever teach. Madison stepped forward. Joseph has been nothing but kind and supportive since the day we met. He raised an amazing man, who I am proud to call my husband. She turned to her father. I love you, Daddy, but what you did today was cruel and unforgivable. Gerald's face had gone from red to white. Several of his country club friends were edging away, pretending they were not associated with him. I placed my hand on Ethan's shoulder. Son, this is your wedding day. Let us not ruin it with more harsh words. But Dad, no, I said firmly. Your father-in-law and I have our differences, but today is about you and Madison, not us. I turned to Gerald, summoning every ounce of dignity I possessed. Mr. Harrison, I do not need your money. I do not need your approval. All I have ever needed was the privilege of being Ethan's father, a privilege I earned through thousands of sleepless nights, worried days, and proud moments. That is something no amount of money can buy and no insult can take away. The silence that followed was profound. Then from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to applaud. Others joined in. Madison's younger brother, who had been quiet throughout the wedding preparations, stepped forward. Mr. Adams, he said, extending his hand. I just wanted to say that I think you are pretty cool. The stories Ethan tells about you, they are amazing. Gerald stood isolated now, his wife having appeared to pull at his sleeve. The crowd began to disperse, the moment of drama passing but not forgotten. Ethan hugged me tightly. I am so sorry, Dad, he whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for, I assured him. Now go have your first dance with your beautiful bride. This is still your day. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance, and Gerald reluctantly took the floor with Madison. Their movements were stiff, the earlier confrontation having left its mark. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Ethan approached me. "Dance with me, Dad," he said. There were murmurs of surprise, then understanding. I had been both mother and father to him. This moment belonged to us. As we moved across the dance floor, memories flooded through me, teaching 3-year-old Ethan to tie his shoes, 10-year-old Ethan to ride a bike, 16-year-old Ethan to drive 20-year-old Ethan to tie a tie before his first big job. Interview: "I never told you this," he said quietly as we danced. "But in college I had a professor ask us to write about our hero. Everyone else wrote about celebrities or historical figures. I wrote about you." A lump formed in my throat. "You did. Dad, you showed me what real strength is. Not money or power, but getting up every day and doing what needs to be done. Loving someone more than yourself." By the time the dance ended, there was not a dry eye in the house. Madison came to hug me, whispering apologies in my ear. Her mother approached cautiously, offering a quiet "I am sorry," while Gerald remained by the bar nursing his wounded pride. The rest of the reception transformed. Guests who had earlier kept their distance now sought me out, asking about Ethan's childhood, sharing stories, offering friendship. Madison's younger brother, Kevin, spent an hour asking me about construction, genuinely interested in work that built things that lasted. When Ethan and Madison left for their honeymoon, they hugged me tightly. "We will see you for Sunday dinner when we get back," Madison promised. Every week. In the weeks following the wedding, the relationship with the Harrisons remained strained but civil. Diane sent a handwritten apology note. Gerald sent an expensive bottle of scotch, but no note. I accepted both for what they were: attempts at reconciliation that acknowledged wrong without fully understanding it. Ethan and Madison established clear boundaries with her parents. Sunday dinners at my house became a tradition. Eventually, the Harrisons were invited too, and though Gerald was quieter than before, he made an effort. The first Thanksgiving after the wedding was tense, but peaceful. By Christmas, Gerald had progressed to asking me questions about construction projects. Slightly condescending questions, but questions nonetheless. The healing was slow, but it was happening. I had chosen not to hold on to bitterness, not because Gerald deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. The wedding that began with humiliation taught me something valuable. My worth as a father was never dependent on Gerald Harrison's approval or anyone else's. It was built over 24 years of showing up, of putting my son first, of teaching him through example rather than words. Real fatherhood cannot be measured by education or bank balances. It is measured in moments, in scraped knees, bandaged in nightmares, soothed in silent sacrifices, made without expectation of reward or recognition. It is measured in the kind of person your child becomes. And looking at Ethan, strong, compassionate, and unafraid to stand up for what is right, I know I did something right after all. Have you ever had to defend your worth to someone who judged you unfairly? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real stories about family dignity and finding your worth beyond other people's expectations. Thank you for listening, and remember, the truest measure of your value will never be found on a nameplate.